This week on Waterways, the Safe Sanctuaries drill, and wild turkey's reintroduction into Everglades National Park.
Late last night, the commercial vessel Portsmouth Trader ran aground, spilling 65,000 gallons of petrol while en route off the Florida Keys. As we speak, department heads from every government resource available have gathered their troops for what might be the most devastating environmental disaster to ever strike our nation's only barrier reef. Our country pauses, speechless.
This is a drill, this is a drill. This message is in support of the 2005 NOAA Safe Sanctuaries exercise. This is only a drill.
Going on record as the largest combined effort of manpower and resources to ever assemble in the history of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, this drill encompasses the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Park Service Rangers, the United States Coast Guard, as well as Florida's own Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Department of Environmental Protection, and other government agencies. In order to simulate the spill, NOAA has devised a method of releasing drift cards, a biodegradable card displaying the contact information of the headquarters unit set up in Marathon. The community is encouraged to report when and where they find a card. This method showed promising results when used in similar NOAA-conducted experiment off of Honolulu, Hawaii. NOAA hopes to employ the worst-case scenario of a marine vessel grounding to exercise certain improvements to the incident response program.
Now with the technology that's now available, NOAA has some tremendous technology that we're applying to this incident, to this drill. And there are things that I couldn't have dreamed of 10 years ago that we're now able to do.
From real-time weather forecasting to interactive maps that show everything from what has been living, growing, and washed ashore, each agency has the resources necessary to assess the situation and respond accordingly.
The satellite dish and the laptop are part of the equipment that we use as incident meteorologists to gather our data from remote locations. The satellite dish can transmit and receive requests for data. We use the FXNet program to get all our meteorological data, which is very similar to the AWIPS program that's used in every National Weather Service office. So we can basically simulate an AWIPS workstation out in the field.
Now, weather, as we know, can change very quickly, and every little bit of change, from whether winds decrease or increase, the change in expected sea heights, it's very important because the response may last many hours or even days. And so it's very good to have the weather support here to inform them of those changes, and also for the safety of the respondents, as in addition to the change in how the oil may drift.
A drill like this really helps NOAA do what it does best, and that is focus not only on public safety, but also protect the resources that we are in trustee of.
Being the trustees of the National Marine Sanctuary, NOAA has years of accumulated knowledge on the affected area and endless concern for how the ecosystem could be shattered by such devastation.
When you're dealing with impact to resources in a national marine sanctuary, there's a much higher threshold for the types of injuries that are there. Those areas have been protected by federal statute and sometimes additionally by state statutes. They've been identified as being nationally significant. So we need to let Coast Guard, we need to let the responsible party know that there's a higher threshold for the response. There are additional issues beyond those that are typical for any kind of a response, whether it's an oil cleanup, dealing with a plane crash, whatever that is. There's always a higher threshold when you're dealing with an environmentally sensitive area.
A drill like this will help us in the future be better prepared, better able to respond, and to identify any gaps that we see in the coordination that must take place during an event like this.
We're building relationships with the locals, with the state. I'm sure the state will have lessons learned as far as what resources NOAA can bring to the table, as well as the Coast Guard. And the relationships of just sitting at the table with the unified command, you just can't measure those. If an actual spill does occur in this area, we're going to be ready.
Everyone is given a chance to voice their opinion. A chain of command is set up in 4 groups. Logistics manages resources. Given the resources, planning offers possible ways to proceed. Command executes those procedures. And operations tracks and reports the outcome. Unfortunately, it's not a simple procedure, so the department heads meet frequently to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Good morning, everybody. The Portsmouth Trader remains hard aground. The moving strategy has been modified slightly. It now extends further to the south.
A verbal report from the SCAT team was phoned in. This was the team up around the Carysport area. They have surveyed an area of about 130 meters long. There was some oil stranded, less than 10%, basically some tar patties along the rack line or the high tide line.
While most are concerned about the coral reefs and the natural resources that surround the mock spill, some are concerned about how the oil might affect cultural resources.
Storage ship, right? So we know there's a wooden vessel submerged underwater. We don't know its name. We don't know its date. We just know it's there. You know, we have the bare bones. We have the ribs of the ship. If oil penetrates that wood, then we lose out on the ability to radiocarbon date that wreck to find out how old she is, which may point to the identification of that ship.
At this point, the oil seems to be the focus of the damage, but so much more is at stake. The area of coral reef now under the vessel will be ground into a barren wasteland that will not fully recover in our lifetime. The crews chart the undamaged surroundings and marks a channel to prevent further damage while salvage efforts continue. For this task, NOAA pulls another trick from their sleeve. They tow a fish, technically referred to as the side scan sonar, which in turn tells them about the topography of the ocean floor.
The purpose that we would be providing predominantly with that is to come in around an impact area and ascertain an approach channel that you could have ingress and egress of your salvage vessels to work on getting the ship out without running back over more reefs and tearing more stuff up.
Yeah, well, I think what's important to understand is the scope of this exercise. I mean, we've got over 140 people involved. It's the largest exercise of its kind that NOAA's ever run.
With such an incredible array of resources at hand, performing other drills such as vessels in distress is a valuable use of time. For this incident, Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beckwith is already on the spill site and is called into action for a simulated fire drill. After swiftly abandoning ship, he activates an EPIRB unit.
We have just abandoned the vessel that was on fire. This is a drill, Safe Sanctuaries 2005. This is the 406 megahertz EPIRB, emergency position indicating radio beacon. It'll send a signal up to a satellite. A signal will be sent to the United States Coast Guard, and hopefully the Coast Guard will send out an aircraft or a vessel to save us. I'm going to go ahead and activate this test EPIRB. Very simple, you open it up and you pull the red handle up. start, and now it'll send out our position.
Yeah, we got a deeper signal in the grounding site.
Yeah, hey, Lieutenant Commander Bach here from Safe Sanctuary. How you doing? Yeah, hey, did you have a EPIRB show up on your system? Yeah, we just got a report from NOAA as well. Offshore Largo, the city of
to go out there and respond to it, find out what's going on. Yeah, this is Steve with the Safety Division. Just getting an update. You guys find that boat yet?
Yes, we found the burning boat. We've got 2 people on board, and we're transporting them to the dock.
Okay, what's the situation with the boat?
The Coast Guard's putting out the fire.
Oh, so there's a fire on the boat?
There was a fire on the boat. Coast Guard's putting out the fire. There were 2 people in the water. They're uninjured, and we've got them on board, and they're all safe.
We're the home of America's only living barrier coral reef, the 3rd largest barrier coral reef in the world. And it's a very precious resource. We have over 3 million visitors that come to the Keys every year to enjoy these very precious resources. An incident like this, which has happened in the past, is something that it can be devastating. It can be devastating not only to the environment, but to the economy of the Keys that is driven off of this very important, fragile ecosystem.
Most people who are aware of their surroundings realize that they share a symbiotic relationship with the environment. The wealth of the Keys can't be measured in condominiums, resorts, or riches. With the support of federal agencies, local and state groups that strive to protect the reef have more resources and support.
What we're hoping to see is that this drill will be repeated at some of the other sanctuaries in the future, and that with each drill we will improve our capability to respond, our capability to coordinate with our federal, state, local agencies, and being better stewards of the resources.
The 90s gave us images of seals covered in black goop resulting from the Exxon Valdez oil spill. If the sea fans and butterfly fish of the Florida Keys ever suffer a similar fate, the reverberations would be felt for years. The abundance of fish and the gin-clear waters are not just a natural resource. It's an economic resource. Though projects like the Safe Sanctuary drill consume time and money, the cost for playing catch-up later could prove much higher. The Everglades, home to alligators, crocodiles, sharks, and turkeys? Biologists and resource managers are bringing wild turkeys back to Everglades National Park.
Historically, we know from records and other accounts that turkeys were in the Pine Rock Ridge and no reason to think that they weren't here in the park. And the last observation of a turkey that we know of, at least within the park records, was from 1975.
South Florida's turkeys used to roam throughout the sliver of rocky Pinelands that runs from Everglades National Park up the east coast of Florida. But the building of houses, roads, and cities ate up the turkeys' pineland habitat. By the mid-1970s, Everglades National Park held the last large chunk of pineland habitat and the last population of turkeys in southernmost Florida. These birds were prey to hunters if they strayed outside of park lands. Eventually, the last few birds in the park died out. But in 2000, a local biologist brought turkey hunting enthusiasts, state biologists, and Everglades National Park together to bring the birds back.
The initiation of the project back in late 1999 and 2000, when we had our first reintroduction here, came about because of the initiative and the support that George Dalrymple, a local biologist working in South Florida and also a member of the Homestead chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation, he came, provided a lot of legwork and a lot of insight, provided information on the historical occurrence of birds here, reasoning why birds would make it here, why they were important to bring back, and helped us a lot in getting support and funds to actually make it happen.
Very appreciative of the National Wild Turkey Federation. They've been a big part of one of our cooperators for this project. And they've bought and paid for the transmitters. We put out 10 transmitters on the turkeys we released today, and that was all provided through the National Wild Turkey Federation.
6 years ago, when this project began, biologists needed to find a wild population elsewhere in Florida they could tap into. Fortunately, they were able to find large numbers of the Osceola turkey, a subspecies of turkey native to Florida.
Yeah, we're trapping off these private ranches. We're using rocket nets. Rocket nets has proved to be a very good capture technique. It was developed probably in the late 50s and early 60s, and it works very well for wild turkeys. And we're very fortunate in some of our private ranches will allow us to catch birds off their properties, and that works out very good for us because usually their areas are fairly secure. The turkeys are not as maybe nervous or wary as they might be on other lands. Once we trap the birds, we put them into cardboard boxes. The National Wild Turkey Federation has developed these and designed these boxes specifically for transporting turkeys.
Good boy. There goes Gobble. Yeah, man, there goes Gobble. But then in the course of the years since 2000, we may have made attempts, particularly in 2004 and 5, to adequately survey by using remote digital infrared cameras on bait stations, using gobbler surveys. The combination of those two techniques tell us or give us some indication of how many birds we still had out here since 2000. As a result of those surveys, both the camera surveys and the gobbling surveys, we figured out that we had maybe a minimum of 6 birds, 4 males and 1, maybe 2 females at the most. Not a lot, to be sure. Still kind of iffy being able to persist in the long run, which is the goal, to have a long-term viable population that can be self-sustaining. But encouraging because one of the birds was a bird that was tagged and released in the original release in 2000, which made it about a 5-year-old bird, and that's pretty old for a turkey. That's pretty old for a turkey. All the other birds that we captured had no tags, meaning that they were reproduction. We had birds that since 2000 laid eggs and pulled off some kind of reproduction, and those birds survived. So we know that birds were able to survive long enough for 5 years, find the food, the resources that they need. We know that they were able to find mates and have young because of the untagged birds. So all those are good signs telling us that we probably can make it if we could just play the numbers game. It really is an issue of just having enough birds out there that they can overcome what any normal population would have as pressures of predation, disease, genetics, all that kind of thing. So you just need to really sort of flood the population as best you can, and so that's why one of the main reasons we want to have another release, why we're doing this now, is to give an extra boost, provide some more birds out there, more chances. And these birds may indeed have even a better chance than the ones in 2000 because they will encounter, hopefully, birds that are now more knowledgeable about where good resources are. The birds that are out here have some experience. They know where the good roosts are, they know where the food is, and being reasonably gregarious, they'll hopefully find each other, and the birds that have been here, the experienced birds, will help the birds that are novices to find the right resources, to find the good roosts, and hopefully to mate as well.
In addition to the gobbler surveys and the infrared cameras, some of the reintroduced turkeys are fitted with tiny tracking devices that look like little backpacks. The tracking radios will enable researchers to locate the new turkeys and find out where the best turkey habitat is, from the turkey's point of view.
I'm from Eco Studies Institute. We're a private research organization based in Washington State and in Florida. And we are in charge of tracking 5 of these turkeys they just released today. They have little radios on them, and with this telemetry equipment we have here, we're going to get locations on them a few times a week and try to figure out where they're going here in the park, what kind of habitats they prefer. So right now we're in Long Pine Key, which is the last remnant of pine rockland habitat left in South Florida. It used to extend along the coastal ridge all the way through Miami, down from Fort Lauderdale, and then west into the park where we are now, but this is all that's left. So we'll be tracking these turkeys for about 2 months. We're going to come out a few days a week and get locations on each of the 5 individuals by triangulating. You go to a few different locations and you get a bearing to where the birds are, and that should give us a pretty good idea of where they're hanging out.
Bringing back the turkeys is just one part of a larger project to restore the Pinelands in Everglades National Park.
We've got a project that is bringing back brown-headed nuthatches, which were absent from the pines for those same reasons, eastern bluebirds, and the wild turkey. So it's kind of a pineland bird restoration project. Bring back the pieces so that the jigsaw puzzle starts to look more like pinelands instead of sort of this fragmented look of that might be pinelands but might not. And so that's just one part of it. Getting the fire right, letting the trees get older, bringing back the species that were extirpated.
It is accepted that wild turkeys were once an integral part of the Everglades ecosystem. The reintroduction of wild turkeys, which was led by the Wild Turkey Federation, may not have happened without the instigation from Federation biologist George Dalrymple.
He came, provided a lot of legwork and a lot of insight, provided information on the historical occurrence of birds here, reasoning why birds would make it here, why they were important to bring back, and helped us a lot in getting support and funds to actually make it happen. It's interesting to note that unfortunately a year ago today, the 5th of January, a year ago, George passed away from a bout of cancer, and here it is a year from his death that we're bringing in yet more birds that are kind of a memorial to George, and they're sort of his adopted children in some way, I think, and I think he'd be pretty happy to see that we're continuing to try and make that come true.
The partners in this project, the Wild Turkey Federation, Everglades National Park, and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, hope to bring back the Osceola wild turkey. Hopefully, the program will also be a lasting tribute to the legacy of George Dalrymple.